The perfect illusion. Camille Beaumont adjusted the diamond pendant at her throat, a gift from her fiancé Dominic Reeves, through the floor-to-ceiling windows of their penthouse. Boston's skyline glittered like a constellation fallen to earth. Tonight's engagement party would cement their status as the city's golden couple, she, the brilliant neurosurgeon with the gentle touch, and he, the venture capitalist with the Midas touch. "You look breathtaking," Dominic said, appearing in the doorway. His voice still gave her goosebumps after 3 years together. Tall, with dark wavy hair and eyes the color of aged whiskey, moved with the confidence of someone who had never been denied anything. "Hard to believe we're only 2 months away from the wedding," Camille replied, smoothing her emerald silk dress. "Everyone's been asking how you managed to convince St. Augustine's to let us reserve it on such short notice." Dominic's smile never wavered. "People tend to make exceptions for the right donation." He kissed her temple. "Your father called earlier. He and your mother will be fashionably late as usual." What Camille didn't see was the slight tightening around Dominic's eyes at the mention of her parents. She didn't notice how he checked his watch, an unconscious habit he'd developed whenever the Beaumonts were mentioned. The first guests arrived at 7. Among them was Vanessa Torres, Camille's best friend since medical school and maid of honor. Her dark eyes narrowed slightly as she hugged Dominic. "Still can't believe you're marrying this one," she whispered to Camille when Dominic stepped away. "To greet others seems too perfect." Camille laughed. "That's because he is." By 9, the penthouse hummed with Boston's elite. Dominic's business associates mingled with Camille's medical colleagues, while caterers weaved through with champagne and cognacs. Dominic stood in the center, regaling a group with stories of his humanitarian work in Southeast Asia. "Before I made my first million, I spent 2 years building water filtration systems in rural villages," he was saying. "Changed my perspective entirely." No one noticed the woman who had just entered, Delano Weber, a research librarian at Harvard. No one except Dominic, whose glass paused halfway to his lips before he recovered and excused himself from the conversation. "Eleanor," he said quietly, steering her toward a quiet corner. "This is unexpected." "I go by Ellie now," she replied, voice equally low, "and it shouldn't be unexpected, not after what you did. This isn't the place I recognized you immediately in that Boston magazine profile last month. You've changed. Your name, but those eyes are unmistakable." Dominic glanced around, ensuring no one was within earshot. "What do you want?" "The truth. Does she know who you really are?" "What you did in Seattle." His jaw tightened. "That was another lifetime, not to the people you destroyed." Ellie's gaze flicked to Camille across the room. "Done this before?" Dominic's charming facade returned instantly as a waiter approached. He took 2 champagne flutes, handed one to Ellie, and whispered, "Meet me tomorrow. The Public Garden, noon." As Ellie slipped away, Dominic rejoined Camille, who was deep in conversation with her brother Julian recently. Returned from a year abroad. Julian's eyes, so similar to Camille's, followed Dominic with unmasked suspicion. "Who was that woman?" Julian asked. "Former investment client," Dominic replied smoothly. Small world. Later, as they bid goodbye to the last guests, Camille wrapped her arms around Dominic's waist. Perfect night. Perfect man. Perfect life. Dominic kissed her deeply, but his eyes remained open, scanning the room over her shoulder. In 60 days, he would complete what he had spent 5 years planning. The Beaumont family had no idea what was coming. Shadows of doubt. Vanessa Torres stared at her computer screen, the blue light casting shadows across her face in the darkened apartment. It was nearly 2 a.m., but sleep was impossible after what she'd discovered. Her browser tabs contained dozens of articles about Dominic Reeves, or rather, the conspicuous absence of Dominic Reeves before 5 years ago. "This doesn't make sense," she muttered, pushing back from her desk. 3 days had passed since Camille and Dominic's engagement party, but something about him had triggered Vanessa's instincts. Perhaps it was the way he'd reacted to that unexpected guest, or maybe it was the practiced perfection of his charm. Whatever it was, Vanessa had begun digging. For someone supposedly renowned in venture capital circles, Dominic's digital footprint before 2020 was suspiciously thin. His claimed Stanford MBA yielded no alumni records. The prestigious London firm where he'd allegedly started his career had no mention of him in their archives. Her phone buzzed with a text from Camille. "Lunch tomorrow? Haven't seen you since." "The party." Vanessa hesitated before replying, "Absolutely." "Usual place at 1?" She couldn't bring her suspicions to Camille without proof. Their friendship had weathered many storms, but Camille had never been so happy, so fulfilled. Breaking that without concrete evidence would be unforgivable. The next morning, Vanessa sat in her car outside the Boston Public Garden, coffee growing cold in the Q folder. She'd arrived early after remembering something from the party Dominic. Arranging to meet someone here at noon, the rain tapped gently against her windshield as she waited. At 11:55, Dominic appeared, walking briskly under a black umbrella. He settled on a bench near the pond, checking his watch repeatedly. At precisely noon, the woman from the party approached. Sitting beside him without greeting, Vanessa slipped out of her car, using other pedestrians as cover. She edged closer, pretending to examine a nearby statue while straining to hear their conversation through the rainfall. "Everything I have on you," the woman was saying, sliding a manila envelope to Dominic. "I'm not interested in ruining you, Thomas. I just wanted to see if there was any humanity left." "Thomas?" Vanessa's heart raced. Who the hell was Thomas? "You have no idea what they did." Dominic or Thomas replied, his voice harder than Vanessa had ever heard it. "The Beaumonts destroyed my family. My father died because of them." "So you're marrying his daughter for what? Revenge?" "Justice," he corrected, "and to reclaim what was stolen. The company, the patents, everything." The woman stood. "You were a good person once. I hope you remember that before you destroy that girl who clearly loves you." After she walked away, Dominic remained on the bench, staring at the envelope. Vanessa retreated, mind reeling with implications. She needed more information about the Beaumont's business dealings and fast. At lunch with Camille, Vanessa struggled to maintain normalcy while her friend gushed about wedding plans. "We're finalizing the prenup next week," Camille mentioned between bites of salad. "Daddy insists, of course. Family company protections and all that." Vanessa saw an opening. "I don't know much about your family's business. What exactly does Beaumont Technologies do again?" "Medical imaging systems, primarily. Daddy revolutionized MRI technology in the 90s, Camille explained. "There was some controversy years ago. A former employee claimed he'd stolen the idea, but it was disproven in court." "What happened to the employee?" Camille frowned. "Not sure. I was in high school. I remember Dad was stressed for months during the lawsuit. Some guy named Sullivan, I think. He lost everything and disappeared afterward." Sullivan. Vanessa's pulse quickened. "Have you ever mentioned this to Dominic?" "Why would I? Ancient history." Camille checked her watch. "I should get back to the hospital. Early surgery tomorrow." After they parted, Vanessa headed straight to the Boston Public Library. If Thomas Sullivan had sued the Beaumonts, there would be records. 3 hours later, she found what she was looking for. Thomas Sullivan versus Beaumont Technologies. 2011, Sullivan had claimed Richard Beaumont had stolen his research and patents. He lost the case when key evidence mysteriously disappeared. The article included a photo of Sullivan with his family at a company picnic before the fallout. Though younger, the eyes were unmistakable. Thomas Sullivan had a teenage son with the same distinctive amber eyes as Dominic Reeves. Vanessa printed everything, hand shaking. Dominic wasn't marrying Camille for love. This was calculated revenge against her family, years in the making. As she gathered her research, her phone pinged with a text from an unknown number. "We need to talk about Dominic. Meet me at Lighthouse Coffee tomorrow, 7 a.m. Julian Beaumont." The gathering storm. Julian Beaumont arrived at Lighthouse Coffee 20 minutes early. Securing the corner table with his back to the wall, a habit from his years as a foreign correspondent. The small cafe was quiet at this hour, just a few early morning regulars and the gentle hiss of the espresso machine. Rain continued to fall outside, casting a gray pall over the city. He was on his second espresso when Vanessa pushed through the door, shaking water from her umbrella. Her typically composed demeanor seemed frayed at the edges. "Thank you for coming," Julian said, rising slightly as she sat. "Your text was cryptic enough to be intriguing," Vanessa replied. "How did you get my number?" "At dinner last night. Said I needed to coordinate a wedding surprise." He studied her face. "But we both know the real surprise might be who Dominic Reeves actually is." Vanessa's eyes widened. "You know?" Julian slid a folder across the table. "Not everything, but enough to be concerned. I've been traveling for years, so I missed the early signs. But something felt off at the engagement party." Inside the folder were photograph surveillance shots of Dominic meeting with various people. "Over the past month, including the woman from the garden, I hired someone to watch him after I noticed him accessing my father's home office during family dinner last week," Julian explained. "He thought no one saw him photographing documents with his phone, but I caught a glimpse. His real name is Thomas Sullivan Jr., Vanessa said quietly, placing her own folder on the table. "His father sued your family's company in 2011 for patent theft." Julian's expression darkened. "I remember that lawsuit. Dad was different afterward. More paranoid, started drinking heavily." He paused. "Sullivan committed suicide 6 months after losing the case. And now his son is marrying your sister." After completely reinventing himself and specifically targeting her, Julian ran a hand through his dark hair. "The question is, what exactly? Does he want revenge?" Vanessa said. "But also something about reclaiming patents in the company." The barista approached with fresh coffee. They waited until she was out of earshot before continuing. "Beaumont Technologies is about to go public," Julian said. "Estimated valuation of $2 billion. The IPO is 3 weeks after the wedding, and Camille will inherit a significant stake, 20%, which would become matrimonial property." Vanessa leaned forward. "That's it. He marries her, gets control of her shares through the marriage, then what? Tanks the company. Or something worse," Julian said grimly. "The prenup wouldn't protect against everything if he's clever enough. And clearly he's been planning this for years." They fell silent, the weight of the situation settling between them. Outside, thunder rumbled, a fitting backdrop to their conversation. "We need to tell Camille," Vanessa finally said. Julian shook his head. "She won't believe us without irrefutable proof. You know how she is logical to a fault. She'll demand evidence that can't be disputed, and she's completely in love with him." Blindly, Julian agreed. "I tried asking casual questions about his background yesterday. She shut me down immediately, accused me of being overprotective." Vanessa pulled out her phone, showing Julian the court record she'd found. "This is damning, but not conclusive. We need something that ties Dominic Reeves directly to Thomas Sullivan Jr. birth certificate." "DNA?" Julian suggested. "A confession," Vanessa said. "If we could get him to admit who he is on recording, ... Too risky. He's too careful." Tapped the table thoughtfully. "What about the woman you saw him with? Could she help? Eleanor Weber? I tracked her to Harvard's Library Science Department, but haven't approached her yet." Julian checked his watch. "The wedding is in 7 weeks. The rehearsal dinner is in 6. We're running out of time." "There's something else," Vanessa hesitated. "I checked Dominic's calendar on Camille's shared family account. He has a meeting with your father today at Beaumont headquarters, just the two of them." Julian's eyes narrowed. "Dad didn't mention this. What if? What if your father knows who Dominic really is?" The possibility hung between them like a live wire. Richard Beaumont was known for his ruthlessness in business. If he had stolen Thomas Sullivan's work and then somehow discovered the son was now infiltrating his family. "We need to get to that meeting," Julian said, standing abruptly. "It's in 2 hours." As they hurried into the rain, neither noticed the man sitting at a table near the door, who had been seemingly absorbed in his newspaper the entire time. He waited until they were gone before making a phone call. "They know," he said simply. "Then yes, both of them. Sullivan's identity, the lawsuit, everything. They're heading to Beaumont Technologies now." He listened briefly. "Understood. I'll continue monitoring." Across town, Dominic Reeves ended the call and turned to face the Boston skyline from Richard Beaumont's office. Behind him, Richard poured 2 glasses of scotch, unaware that his daughter's fiancé had just been warned that his carefully constructed plan was beginning to unravel. "To family," Richard said, offering a glass. "To justice," Dominic replied with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. The wedding unravels. The Cathedral of St. Augustine stood resplendent in the June sunshine, its Gothic spires reaching toward a flawless blue sky. Inside, flowers worth a small fortune transformed the historic space into a fragrant garden. White roses, orchids, and lilies cascading from every archway. 300 guests filled the pews. Culmination of Boston's elite gathered to witness the union of Camille Beaumont and Dominic Reeves in the bridal suite. Camille sat before a gilded mirror as the makeup artist applied final touches. Gown and Ellie Saab, creation of hand-embroidered lace and pearls pooled around her like sea foam. She appeared serene, but her hands betrayed her, trembling slightly as she held her mother's antique pearl hairpin. "You look absolutely radiant," her mother Victoria said, blinking back tears. Camille smiled tightly. The past 6 weeks had been strange. Julian and Vanessa growing increasingly distant. But her father burying himself in work ahead of the company's IPO, and Dominic. Something had shifted in him too. Small things. Late-night phone calls he took in private. Unexplained absences. A certain tension when the family gathered. "Is everything all right, darling?" Victoria asked, noticing her daughter's expression. "Perfect," Camille led. "Just wedding jitters." A knock at the door revealed Vanessa, stunning in her maid-of-honor gown of deep burgundy. Her face was composed, but her eyes held an intensity that Camille couldn't decipher. "Can we have a moment?" Vanessa asked Victoria, who nodded and stepped out. "If this is another warning about Dominic," Camille began. "It's not," Vanessa interrupted, though the lie was evident. After their discovery at Beaumont Technologies, she and Julian had hit a wall. Whatever transpired between Richard and Dominic remained secret. Their attempts to gather conclusive evidence had yielded only fragments concerning, but nothing Camille would accept as proof of deception. "I just wanted to give you this." She handed Camille a small box containing a sapphire bracelet. "Something blue, and a reminder that, whatever happens, I'm here for you. Always." Across the cathedral in the groom's suite, Dominic adjusted his bow tie with steady hands. The last 5 years, creating Dominic Reeves, building his false history, positioning himself to meet Camille, cultivating the relationship culminating today, not in marriage, but in revelation. Julian entered without knocking. "It's time." Dominic nodded, noting the coldness in his almost brother-in-law's eyes. "Julian, still suspicious of me, I see." "I know who you are," Julian said quietly. A flicker of something surprise, perhaps respect, crossed Dominic's face before his mask returned. "Interesting theory. Shame you can't prove it. Why go through with this? If it's revenge you want, you have no idea what I want, Dominic. Cut him off, but everyone will know soon enough." The cathedral organ began the processional as Dominic took his place at the altar. The guests rose as the bridal party entered, first the flower girls, then bridesmaids, and finally Vanessa, who fixed Dominic with a look of pure contempt. Then came Camille, radiant on her father's arm. Richard Beaumont, despite his imposing business reputation, looked emotional as he escorted his daughter. His eyes, however, never quite met Dominic's. As the priest began the ceremony, Camille felt a strange disconnection, as if watching herself. From a distance, something wasn't right. The way her father handed her over to Dominic felt laden with unspoken meaning. The slight pressure of Dominic's hand on hers seemed possessive rather than loving. Before we proceed with the vows, the priest said, "The groom has requested a special moment to honor the bride's family. This wasn't in the rehearsal." Camille turned to Dominic, questioning. "Richard Beaumont," Dominic said, his voice carrying through the cathedral's perfect acoustics. "Would you join us?" Confused murmurs rippled through the congregation as Richard hesitantly stepped forward. 15 years ago, Dominic continued, a brilliant engineer named Thomas Sullivan created a revolutionary medical imaging technology. His work was stolen by his employer, who then destroyed his reputation, drove him to financial ruin, and ultimately to take his own life. Gasps echoed through the cathedral. Victoria Beaumont half froze from her seat, face ashen. "That employer was you, Richard," Dominic said, his charming facade falling away, "and Thomas Sullivan was my father." The cathedral erupted in shocked whispers. Camille stared at Dominic, uncomprehending, then at her father, whose expression confirmed the terrible truth. "Dominic, what are you?" she began. "My name is Thomas Sullivan, Jr.," he said, finally turning to her. "Everything else has been a carefully constructed lie, designed to bring me to this moment." From inside his jacket, he produced a small remote and pressed a button. The cathedral's projection screens, installed to show the ceremony to those in the back, flickered to life. But instead of wedding footage, they displayed documents, patent applications, emails, court records. "What you're seeing is evidence that Richard Beaumont stole my father's work. Bribed judges and intimidated witnesses," Dominic announced. "Evidence I've spent 5 years gathering. Evidence that has already been sent to the SEC, the FBI, and every major news outlet." Richard lunged forward. "You can't. It's done," Dominic said coldly. "Beaumont Technologies will never go public now. The empire you built on theft is over." He turned back to Camille, whose face had drained of all color. "I never intended to marry you. This ceremony, this spectacle, was always meant to be the stage for your father's downfall." The final screen showed a photograph of Thomas Sullivan, Signora, man with the same amber eyes as Dominic, alongside his wife and teenage son. The date stamp showed it was taken 1 week before he died. "You used me," Camille whispered, her voice breaking. "Everything was a lie." "Not everything," Dominic replied, and for the first time, uncertainty flickered in his expression. "That's what I didn't expect." Before he could continue, security personnel burst through the doors.
"At the wedding."
Security federal agents. Leading them was Julian, who must have slipped out during the confrontation. As chaos erupted around them, Camille stood perfectly still in her beautiful gown, the cathedral she'd dreamed of since childhood, now the scene of her greatest humiliation. The perfect illusion had shattered completely, leaving nothing but shards of truth too sharp to hold. Beyond betrayal, 6 months later, Camille Beaumont stood at the window of her new apartment in Philadelphia, watching snowflakes drift against the twilight sky. The space was smaller than her Boston penthouse, but felt more like home, a place untainted by deception. Medical journals lay scattered across her coffee table alongside case files from the Children's Hospital, where she'd taken a position after leaving Massachusetts General. Her phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa, turning on the news now. "Okay?" Camille didn't reply immediately. Instead, she switched on the television just in time to catch the breaking news banner. Breaking: Richard Beaumont sentenced to 12 years for fraud, patent theft. The reporter stood outside the federal courthouse, snow collecting on her coat. In a stunning conclusion to one of Boston's most notorious corporate scandals, Richard Beaumont, former CEO of Beaumont Technologies, has been sentenced to 12 years in federal prison.
Oh.
This follows his conviction on 27 counts, including patent theft, securities fraud, witness tampering, and obstruction of justice. The camera cut to Richard being led away in handcuffs, visibly aged since his arrest. Victoria followed behind, face hidden behind dark glasses. Camille closed her eyes. The past 6 months had unraveled everything she thought she knew about her family. Her father's crimes had proven even more extensive than Thomas. She still couldn't think of him as Dominic had revealed. Investigation had uncovered decades of corporate espionage, bribery, and fraud extending far beyond the Sullivan patents. Her phone rang. "Julian, you watching?" he asked when she answered. She said softly, "How's Mom?" Holding up. "The house sale closes next week. She's found a place in Vermont." The Beaumont fortune had largely evaporated between legal fees, settlements, and restitution. The company had been sold in pieces, its once groundbreaking technologies now dispersed among competitors. "And how are you?" Camille asked. Julian had been caught in the crossfire too, his journalism career temporarily derailed by the family scandal. "Leaving for Snow Paulo tomorrow." That correspondent position finally came through. He paused. Have you heard from him? Camille knew who he meant. No, this wasn't entirely true. 3 months ago, a package had arrived containing a single item. The diamond pendant Thomas had given her, along with a handwritten note with just 2 words. I'm sorry, the reporter continued. In a surprising development, Thomas Sullivan Jr., who orchestrated the exposure of Beaumont's crimes, was granted immunity in exchange for his testimony. Sullivan's whereabouts remain unknown after he declined the substantial whistleblower reward, requesting instead that the funds be directed to families affected by corporate fraud. The doorbell rang, startling Camille. She wasn't expecting anyone. Through the peephole, she saw Eleanor Weber, the Harvard librarian, whose appearance at the engagement party had been the first crack in the perfect facade. May I come in? Eleanor asked, when Camille opened the door. I promise this isn't another ambush. Hesitantly, Camille stepped aside. Eleanor entered, unwinding her scarf and taking in the modest apartment. I like what you've done with the place, she said. It suits you better than that sterile penthouse. How did you find me? I'm a research librarian. Finding people is part of the job. Eleanor sat on the edge of the sofa. I thought you deserved some answers, now that the trial is over. I'm not sure I want them, Camille said, but she sat opposite Eleanor anyway. Thomas and I grew up together in Seattle, Eleanor began. We were close like siblings. I watched what your father's actions did to his family. His mother died of cancer while they were still battling the lawsuit. They couldn't afford proper treatment after losing everything. Camille flinched. These were details Thomas had never shared during their 3 years together. When Thomas disappeared after college, I assumed he was trying to start fresh somewhere. I had no idea he was methodically creating Dominic Reeves, building this elaborate persona to infiltrate your family. Eleanor leaned forward. What you need to understand is that the Thomas I knew died alongside his parents, the person who became. Dominic was consumed by revenge. Why are you telling me this? Camille asked. Because he asked me to. Eleanor reached into her bag and produced a sealed envelope. Wanted you to have this after the sentencing. Promised I'd deliver it personally. Camille stared at the envelope but didn't take it. If this is another apology, it's not. It's the truth, the complete truth. Eleanor placed the envelope on the coffee table. What you do with it is your choice. After Eleanor left, Camille sat for a long time staring at the envelope. Outside, the snow fell harder, muffling the city sounds. Finally, she opened it. Inside was a flash drive and a letter. The letter explained that the drive contained recordings of every conversation Thomas had with her father, including one from the day before the wedding, when Richard had finally recognized him and attempted to strike a deal. The final paragraph read, I constructed Dominic Reeves to be everything you would fall in love with. What I never anticipated was that I would fall in love with you in return. By the time I realized it, I was too far down this path to turn back. The man you knew wasn't entirely fictional. He was who I might have become in another life. One where your father hadn't destroyed mine. I don't ask for forgiveness. Some betrayals are too profound. But I wanted you to know that in a life built on lies, what I felt for you was the only truth I had. It was signed simply Thomas. Camille inserted the flash drive into her laptop. The files were meticulously organized, including the original patent applications her father had stolen. But what caught her eye was a video file titled Final Decision. It showed Thomas in what appeared to be a hotel room the night before the wedding. He looked tormented, nothing like the confident Dominic she knew. Tomorrow, I destroy the Beaumonts, he said to the camera. Justice for my father, for my mother. He ran his hands through his hair. So why does it feel like I'm about to lose the only thing that matters? The video cut to him pacing, then stopped abruptly as he looked directly into the camera. If you're watching this, Camille, it means I went through with it. I chose revenge over love. Maybe that makes me no better than your father sacrificing what's real for what's righteous. His voice broke. I don't expect you to understand. I just need you to know that the man who loved you wasn't a complete fabrication. Camille closed the laptop, tears streaming down her face. The anger she'd nurtured for months began to shift, not disappearing, but transforming into something more complex. Her father had committed unforgivable crimes. Thomas had orchestrated an unforgivable deception, as she had been caught between two men driven by their own versions of justice. Her phone buzzed again with a text from an unknown. Number, Channel 7. Now. She turned back to the television. The news had cut to a different story. Announcement of a new medical research foundation focusing on affordable healthcare technologies. The foundation was anonymous, but its first project was named the Sullivan-Beaumont Initiative for Ethical Innovation. Camille recognized the deliberate message in that NAMA bridge between two broken legacies. A chance for something new to emerge from the wreckage of revenge and corruption. She stepped back to the window. Somewhere beyond the falling snow, beyond the city lights, Thomas Sullivan was starting over again. So was she. This time they were both building on truth.